All right, strap in, everybody. Let's dive headfirst into some, how to put this, interesting territory.
That's one way to put it.
I think most people are familiar with Alex Jones, the guy who uh, really likes to push the boundaries with his theories.
Oh yeah, he definitely has a unique perspective.
So we're taking a look at some excerpts from his radio show, and it's like, I don't know, a glimpse into a world that, well, a lot of people might find a little off-putting. You know what I mean?
It's definitely a different way of looking at things.
But I always say, sometimes the best way to understand something is to just jump right in.
I think that's a good approach. By examining these ideas, even the ones that seem out there, we can learn a lot about how people think and why they believe what they believe.
Exactly. Okay, so one of Jones's favorite topics is geoengineering.
Yeah, that's a big one for him. He claims there's this massive, secret program happening right over our heads.
And his proof.
Chemtrails.
Ah, yes, the infamous chemtrails.
He describes them as, planes spraying all kinds of stuff into the atmosphere. Aluminum salts, barium. He even says they're spraying radioactive isotopes.
Wait, hold on. Radioactive isotopes. That's a bit much, don't you think?
Well, that's Jones for you. He doesn't shy away from dramatic claims. And to make it seem more credible, he'll often quote this supposed geoengineering scientist who's, terrified of the whole thing. But he never names the scientist or provides any real evidence to back up the claims.
I see. So it's kind of like trusting a magician to explain the laws of physics.
Yeah, there's definitely a lack of scientific rigor there, and that's where critical thinking comes in. It's easy to get swept up in these narratives, especially when they tap into our fears and anxieties. But it's important to step back and ask ourselves, what evidence supports these claims? Who are the sources? And what might their motivations be?
That's a good point. It's so easy to just take things at face value, especially when they're presented with confidence and certainty.
Exactly, and that's what makes these kinds of claims so tricky. They often play on our emotions rather than appealing to logic or reason.
He actually brings up a real scientist, Dr. Matthew Watson from Bristol University.
Oh, yeah. Watson's a legitimate climate scientist, but Jones kind of twists his words to fit his narrative. Watson has expressed concerns about certain geoengineering proposals, but in the context of mitigating climate change, Jones takes those concerns and uses them to fuel his conspiracy theory.
So it's a classic case of cherry-picking information to support a pre-existing belief.
Exactly. It's all about fitting the pieces together to create a story, even if that story doesn't necessarily reflect reality.
It's like those puzzle games where you can force the pieces to fit even if they're not in the right spots.
It's a good analogy, and when you hear Jones talk, it's easy to get caught up in that puzzle-solving mentality. You start looking for connections, for evidence that supports the narrative, but you have to be careful not to lose sight of the bigger picture and the importance of critical thinking.
It makes you wonder, why do people buy into this? Is it just a lack of scientific literacy, or is there something deeper going on?
It's definitely more complex than just a lack of scientific knowledge. It's about the fear of the unknown, of forces beyond our control. And this fear is often amplified by anecdotal evidence. Like you'll hear from a caller on the show, a guy named Dom from California.
Dom from California, okay.
Yeah, Dom claims he's actually filming these chemtrails, he's got video evidence, and he's even created a website, chemchasers.com, dedicated to documenting all of this.
So it's like, I saw with my own eyes, therefore it must be true.
Exactly. Personal experience becomes the ultimate proof, even if it contradicts scientific consensus.
But our senses can be deceiving, and personal experience isn't always the most reliable source of information.
Absolutely. And that's what makes it so important to approach these claims with a healthy dose of skepticism.
We all see those white streaks behind planes, right? The contrails.
Yeah.
Well, Jones takes this everyday phenomenon and turns it into something sinister. He sees contrails and immediately jumps to chemtrails.
It's like he's looking for evidence to confirm his beliefs, rather than approaching it with an open mind. And while there are legitimate concerns about the environmental impact of contrails, especially as air travel increases, it's a far cry from the, secret government spraying program that Jones describes.
It's interesting how he takes something familiar, something we see all the time, and twists it into something scary.
That seems to be a pattern with him. He does the same thing with the economy. In this excerpt, he predicts a complete economic collapse in 2015.
Oh, right, the 2015 collapse.
He's citing all these experts and market indicators, painting this really bleak picture of the future, like the world is about to end.
It sounds pretty intense.
It is, but keep in mind, this was recorded back in 2015. So as you listen, think about what actually happened. Did the world end financially? What economic trends were at play then? And how have they evolved? It's a good exercise in critical thinking, comparing predictions to reality.
All right, so we've got chemtrails, economic collapse. What else is on the agenda?
Well, get this. We're taking a detour into the world of film. A caller brings up Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut.
Eyes wide shut. Okay, this is getting interesting.
Yeah, the caller suggests that the film is full of hidden messages about, get this, the Illuminati and elite pedophilia rings.
Whoa, hold on. Illuminati and pedophilia rings in, eyes wide shut. That's a new one.
And Jones jumps right on this. He claims he interviewed Kubrick's daughter, Vivian.
He interviewed Vivian Kubrick.
That's what he says. And according to Jones, she hinted at all sorts of sinister, behind-the-scenes stuff related to the film. He also throws in the fact that 25 minutes were cut from the film after Kubrick died.
Which, adds fuel to the conspiracy fire.
Exactly. It creates this sense of mystery, like there's something being hidden from us, and Eyes Wide Shut, with its themes of secrecy and hidden societies, is the perfect canvas for this kind of speculation.
Eyes Wide Shut does have this really eerie, unsettling vibe. It's definitely a film that gets under your skin.
It does, and that's what makes it so ripe for interpretation. People can project their own anxieties and suspicions onto it.
It's like looking for shapes in the clouds, right? You can find whatever you're looking for if you try hard enough.
Exactly. But just because we can find a pattern doesn't mean it's meaningful or representative of reality.
All right, so we've covered chemtrails, economic collapse, and hidden messages in Stanley Kubrick films. Where do we go from here?
Well, buckle up, because Jones takes us on a whirlwind tour of other random claims. It's like a rapid-fire barrage of conspiracy theories touching on everything from, well, you name it. He talks about the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand and how it relates to World War I, the supposed effectiveness of his own health supplement.
Wait, his own health supplement?
I'm like, oh yeah, he's got a whole line of them. He also brings up Bill Gates and this thing about poop water, criticizes Al Sharpton and the media. It's a lot to take in.
It's like he's throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
It really is. But what's interesting is that he's not alone in this. Throughout the show, you hear callers echoing his claims, adding their own anxieties to the mix. It creates this sense of a shared belief system, a community where these ideas can flourish.
So it's not just about the content itself, but also about the community that forms around it.
Exactly. It's a self-reinforcing echo chamber where dissenting voices are quickly drowned out.
And that makes it even harder to challenge these beliefs, even with overwhelming evidence to the contrary.
Absolutely, because it's not just about facts and logic anymore. It's about identity and belonging. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're not just exploring a collection of claims. We're delving into the heart of a belief system that thrives on fear, community, and a sense of being in the know.
This has been quite a journey, and we've only just scratched the surface. We've seen how Jones expertly weaves these seemingly unrelated ideas together, creating this grand narrative that's both compelling and concerning. But what's the psychology behind it all? Why do these beliefs resonate so strongly with some people? We'll have to keep digging.
It's easy to get lost in the specifics of each individual claim, but the bigger picture is really interesting.
Right, yeah.
Why do these ideas resonate with people in the first place?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is, and a recurring theme we see in Jones's show is this fear of being controlled,
Oh, yeah.
like manipulated.
Like a puppet.
Exactly. He paints this picture of these powerful forces, governments, corporations, elites, pulling the strings, manipulating our lives without our consent.
Yeah, and it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like chemtrails, controlling the weather or the economy is rigged to make us poor.
Right. It plays into this very primal fear.
Oh, yeah.
The fear of losing control, of being a pawn in someone else's game.
Yeah, no one wants to feel like that.
Right. And it's not like this fear comes from nowhere. I mean, we do live in a complex world.
For sure.
Decisions made far away can impact our lives, and technology and globalization. It just makes everything
Even more confusing.
more confusing, more
Right.
fast-paced. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like you're just caught in this, bureaucratic nightmare,
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
You're getting passed from one department to the next.
Yeah.
No one's giving you a straight answer.
Mm-hmm.
You just feel powerless and frustrated, like the system is designed to just keep you in the dark.
Yeah. That's a perfect analogy. It's that feeling of being lost in a maze, not knowing who to trust or where to turn for answers.
Yeah, no one likes that feeling.
And when we're in that state of uncertainty, it's easy to see how conspiracy theories can provide a sense of order and control.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
They offer a simple explanation, a clear enemy,
Right.
a way to make sense of a world that feels chaotic.
Yeah, like instead of feeling lost and confused, you suddenly got a map, even if it's a map to a fictional treasure.
Exactly. It might be the wrong map, but at least it gives you a sense of direction,
Right.
a feeling that you're not just wandering aimlessly. And this brings us to another key aspect,
Okay.
the power of community.
Oh, yeah.
So Jones's show, it's not just him ranting. It's a conversation with his listeners. They call in, they share their experiences, they reinforce each other's beliefs.
So it's like a virtual support group
Yeah.
where people can kind of validate those fears and anxieties, knowing that they're not alone in feeling like something is wrong.
Right. It's that sense of belonging, being a part of something bigger than yourself.
Right.
It can be incredibly powerful, especially for people who feel marginalized or alienated from mainstream society.
Sure, so it's like being part of this exclusive club
Exactly.
with this secret knowledge that sets you apart from the sheeple.
It feeds into this us versus them mentality.
Right.
Those who believe in the conspiracy are the enlightened few. Everyone else is blindly following the official narrative.
Oh, right.
And this creates a really strong in-group dynamic that can be very resistant to outside information or dissenting viewpoints.
So it's like trying to reason with a diehard sports fan during a rivalry game.
Perfect analogy.
Like their loyalty is absolute. Any facts that challenge their team are just dismissed as fake news or propaganda.
That's a great comparison. It's that emotional investment, that sense of identity and belonging that makes these belief systems so resilient.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They're not just about information, they're about community purpose, a shared sense of reality, and that makes them very difficult to challenge, even with mountains of evidence to the contrary.
So where does this leave us? I mean, are we just doomed to live in these echo chambers talking past each other,
Right.
never finding common ground?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And it's one we'll continue to explore in the next part of our deep dive, but I think the first step is understanding.
Okay.
We need to go beyond just labeling these ideas as like crazy or dangerous,
Right.
and try to really understand the psychological and social forces at play. I think only then can we start to bridge the divide and have more productive conversations.
Okay, I'm ready to go deeper. What's next on this wild ride? So we've really gone down the rabbit hole with this one, explored some pretty out there ideas and tried to understand, why these beliefs have such a hold on some people. It's easy to just write it off as like fringe nonsense, but
Yeah, but I think that misses the point a bit.
yeah,
I mean, we can't just ignore these ideas.
right.
They might seem outlandish to us, but, this represents a real part of society and it's growing.
It's a little unsettling when you really think about it.
It is concerning, especially because we're not just talking about a few isolated individuals here.
Right, like everywhere you turn.
These beliefs are widespread and they're impacting our society in some pretty big ways.
So the question is, what do we do about it?
Right, like what's the antidote to this kind of thinking?
Yeah. Is there a way to bridge the gap and bring people back from the fringes?
I think it starts with education,
Okay.
cultivating critical thinking skills.
Not just like fact checking and stuff.
Right. It's more than that. It's about really understanding how information is produced, how it's spread, and how we consume it.
So it's like learning to read the fine print.
Certainly.
Look beyond the headlines and really break it down. Understand the motivations behind it all.
Yeah, and this applies to everything, not just the stuff we disagree with.
Right.
We should be critical of all information.
So like a news article.
A news article, a social media post, even just a casual conversation.
Right. Always question everything.
It's like trust but verify.
Exactly.
And verification goes beyond just checking facts.
It's okay.
It's about considering multiple perspectives, seeking out diverse sources, and having the humility to change our minds when we're presented with new evidence.
That's tough though, isn't it?
It is.
It's so much easier to just stick with what you already believe.
Yeah, but that's how we end up in these echo chambers.
Yeah, just surrounded by people telling us what we want to hear. Doesn't really help us grow though, does it?
It's a challenge for sure, but it's so important for personal growth and for our society to progress.
So how do we encourage this kind of thinking,
Wow.
both in ourselves and others? Yeah. How do we break free from those echo chambers and have more productive conversations?
I think education is a big part of it. We need to give people the tools to navigate this complex world of information.
Give them a compass and a map, so to speak.
Exactly. So they can explore with confidence and avoid getting lost.
But even with those tools, you still need to be willing to use them.
That's true.
So how do we foster those open and respectful conversations with people who see things so differently from us?
I think empathy is really important,
Oh, yeah.
creating spaces where people feel safe to share their views, even if those views are controversial.
Right.
It's about listening to understand, trying to see the world from their perspective,
Even if we don't agree with it.
even if we don't agree, because ultimately it's not about winning arguments or proving someone wrong.
Right. It's not a competition.
It's about building bridges, finding common ground, and working together to create a society that's more informed and engaged.
Well, what a journey this has been.
It has.
We started with chemtrails, then went on a detour through Stanley Kubrick, and ended up talking about the nature of truth and how we form our beliefs in a world that's just flooded with information.
It's been fascinating. I hope it's given our listeners something to think about.
Yeah, maybe sparked a little healthy skepticism.
Well, I hope so.
If there's one thing I want people to take away from this, it's stay curious, stay critical, and never stop questioning.
Well said.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of the fringes of belief.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
And remember, there's always more to discover out there, but approach it with a discerning mind.